From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Friday, June the 28th, 2024. As intense battles continue in Gaza between Israeli troops and terror group Hamas, the IDF announced today that an IDF soldier was killed yesterday in Gaza. He is 19-year-old Sergeant Eyal Shines. The IDF said its ground troops began a targeted operation in the last day in the Shajaya region in the continued fighting in Gaza, above and below ground at the same time, saying this follows intelligence information indicating the presence of terrorists and terrorist infrastructure in the area. Last night, the IDF said it eliminated a terrorist operating from within the humanitarian zone, which it said the organization of Hamas used as a shield for terrorist activity, adding that it evacuated the civilian population located around the building from which the terrorist was operating, as well as taking additional measures to reduce harm to civilians. Some 35 rockets were launched at northern Israel yesterday from Lebanon. The IDF said most were intercepted by the Iron Dome and no injuries were caused. Today, the IDF said the air defense fighters successfully intercepted a suspicious aerial target that crossed the territory of Lebanon. The IDF continues to respond to the rocket and drone attacks, and today hit a structure where Hezbollah terrorists were operating from. Jewish organizations, including the Anti-Defamation League and the UJA Federation of New York, stood together with the National Urban League, the nation's largest historic civil rights and urban advocacy organization, to jointly call for the reinstatement of New York's masked intimidation laws yesterday, launching Unmask Hate NY. In the anti-Israel protests that we have seen over the last many months, protesters are mostly masked to hide their identities, which the ADL said enables individuals to wreak havoc and avoid any consequences for conduct that crosses the line, saying concealing one's identity in order to harass, intimidate, and terrorize Jews or any other group in New York is simply unacceptable. Well, U.S. federal officials are looking into the anti-Israel protest last weekend outside the Torah Synagogue in Los Angeles, where protesters are said to have tried to block the entrance to the synagogue that was hosting an Israeli real estate fair. Pro-Palestinian supporters clashed with Israel supporters. Police were called to the scene. One person was arrested. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland said this week that evidence is being collected in the case and spoke more broadly about anti-Semitic hate, which he called morally odious.
This is a matter that matters to me personally. It matters to me personally not only because, as many of you know, my personal history of having relatives who escaped the Holocaust and some who did not, but it also matters to me personally because I'm part of a contemporary community that has a widespread and well-founded fear of anti-Semitic hatred. So let me say, both to the Jewish community and to those who would do it harm, the Justice Department will not tolerate criminal acts motivated by anti-Semitic hate. We will find those people who are perpetrators, and we will hold them accountable.
Former hostage Maya Regev, who was shot and kidnapped on October the 7th and released after 50 days of captivity at the end of November, was discharged from the hospital earlier this month after a long, intensive rehabilitation process. She said her time in captivity in Gaza was one of endless pain, and yet, she says in a video released this week, she is one of the lucky ones. The video is addressed to President Biden and urges the American public and the international community to continue to call for the immediate release of the remaining hostages still held captive in Gaza, now for 266 days.
Like 120 hostages, including Americans, are still held and abused in Gaza. In the name of American values, I urge you to keep pushing for their freedom. Thank you, and God bless America.
Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Friday, June the 28th. Live Shabbat services are coming up at 6 o'clock from New York City's Central Synagogue, followed by Shabbat services from the Hampton Synagogue. At 8:30, Shalom Hartman Institute President Yehuda Kurtzer addresses Jewish peoplehood in a post-October 7th world at the Institute's Community Leadership Program in Jerusalem. At 10, David Harris is once again joined by barrister, specialist in international law, and director of UK Lawyers for Israel, Natasha Hausdorff, to continue the conversation on Israel advocacy. At 10:30, it's a replay from the Hampton Synagogue, followed by a replay from Central. And coming up next, a look at this week's Torah Portion. And that's the JBS News Update for Friday, June the 28th, 2024. I'm Teisha Bader. Shabbat Shalom. Am Yisrael Chai.